it would be rather silly for me not to vlog about Richard III at this point, seeing as I live in Leicester and his skeleton has apparently just been... This is the statue of Richard III in the park nearby. This is a view of him from the front with the sun in the wrong place. There you go. No hunchback visible, which is quite interesting. And this is the West Gate, which is the bridge over which he rode out to Bosworth Field. What I'm going to try and do today is to get as close as possible to the site where he's said to have been buried, and also look at the cathedral, and then talk a bit about genetic testing which was developed here in Leicester. This is what is now Leicester Cathedral. At the time it wasn't a cathedral, I'm not sure whether it was even built. And interestingly, along here, this is where he's going to be buried, by the way, apparently. This is the plaque. Along here we have the sign saying, "Visit Richard III's Memorial Stone in the Cathedral." Now, I'm going to do one more thing before I go inside, and that is try to find the site and do a bit of filming, which is going to be a bit intimidating. Just to talk about the way the DNA testing was done. It was developed at Leicester University, which is my alma mater. It's about finding traces of DNA and amplifying them with various chemical reactions. And what it does is you can test in 3 different ways. You can test the Y chromosome, in which case it reveals the male line, which is presumably what they did with him. The autosomal chromosomes, which are the other chromosomes. Or you can test the mitochondrial DNA, which reveals the mother's line, because the cell protoplasm is inherited through the mother, and therefore the mitochondria, which are in the protoplasm, will be inherited through the mother. And that's presumably what they did. Now, what they found was that he did have scoliosis, in other words, he was a hunchback, he didn't have a clubfoot, and he didn't have a withered hand. Now, I think he was a man of his times, and I think that we are all people of our times, and that historical forces act through us, and therefore we do what we are determined to do. And individuals in general are not important, although history does act through individuals. As a result, I think that maybe he did murder the princes in the tower. It looks like he did, because skeletons were found there in the 17th century, although possibly the Richard III Society has a different view on this. And he did that because that was what happened in those days. And we shouldn't hold that against him necessarily. 32 when he died, it was in 1485, and it was considered to be the end of the Middle Ages in England. So it was the beginning of the modern era. He was the last English king to die in battle. And interesting, and it's also interesting to see how some of what we thought we knew about him turns out to be correct, and other things turn out to be fabrications. And I think that's what always happens with history. And the story about him going over the bridge and his spur striking is another piece of folk history, which, you know, may not have happened. And really that we ourselves are also people of our time, and therefore we can't look back and see things the way anyone would have seen it then.